There we go. So, welcome everybody to the next episode of Serenity Sparks. Today I'm talking with the delightful Sarah Wooden from Knock on Wood Virtual Assistants. Sarah is a systems strategist and online business manager, a certified period coach with a passion for strategies that help busy business owners find more flow. She specialises in helping busy women in business streamline their operations and achieve their goals with a strong history of supporting neurodiverse entrepreneurs. I seem to attract everybody like that too. I think it's we attract attracts like, isn't it? So Sarah
Yes,
excels in
often
creating
that's the first clue.
Sarah excels in creating efficient systems, managing projects, and implementing the foundational admin pieces for long-term growth in business. And I'm all about grounding your castle in the air down on solid foundations. So this week, we're still talking about business as an epic adventure. And business as an epic adventure often involves navigating unexpected twists and turns. So can you share with us a moment when the need to restructure, whether in business or homeschooling, because I know we both homeschool, or in life in general, felt like a plot twist in your story? And what helped you turn it into a breakthrough rather than a breakdown?
I have several actually, but there's two sort of significant pieces that I'd love to sort of talk a little bit more about.
Sure.
So the first is actually how I ended up doing what I'm doing now. I didn't actually start out to be a virtual assistant. I was not Googling how to be a virtual assistant or anything like that. We lived in a tiny house on wheels, which we DIY built, and we lived in there for 2 years. My baby learned to walk in our tiny house, and I loved it. And through that process, so many people were asking questions, and I started coaching. It was never financially viable. I never hit the point that I was making money, but I was making impact. I was invited to speak at a whole bunch of different events, and I was known in the community. It was pretty cool. I really loved doing that. Then we had an accident, and we moved out of the tiny house. Could no longer arranged. So there was sort of like this identity crisis of, if I'm no longer the girl in the tiny house, can I still talk about tiny houses? And there was a bit of an evolution with that, and tried, taking it towards minimalism and a couple different things, but it just wasn't hitting right. And then COVID happened. And all of these, like I've still got $400 of workbooks sitting hiding in a box somewhere that I just cannot bear to destroy, but I don't talk about that stuff anymore. I invested all this money in these workbooks for this expo where I was supposed to be like a keynote speaker, and then everything came crumbling down. I was like, oh, now what? And I'm not someone who is happy just being internal. Like I need that opportunity to create something and to make an impact and to network and collaborate. Like I really need that. Call it a need for validation. I don't know. But it's something that I really thrive on. So I was like, oh, okay, what do I do now? And then I happened to notice that a business owner that I knew was really struggling to keep up with business. She'd put these things out there, but then it would take 6 months to sort of get around. And I reached out and I went, hey, I've got a business, I've got a background in administration, in hospitality, in management. I've done telco, like I've done all of the things. If you'd like some help, happy to jump in. And originally she actually said no, which was fine. And then a couple months later, she came back to me and was like, I'm drowning, please help. And so I jumped in and very quickly saw the difference that not just outsourcing, but also putting systems into place made. There was nothing, like everything was being done manually. There was no booking system, there were no forms, like everything was manual, individually mailing out the Microsoft Teams or the Zoom links, everything was so time consuming. And it wasn't just outsourcing, it was setting up the systems that made a difference. And so I sort of fell into this, and very quickly I had a full load of clients, was ghostwriting for articles and for magazines and for all this sort of different stuff. I did not set out to it, but there was this transition period where I realized that I was no longer the girl in the tiny house anymore. And now I needed to sort of forge a new identity and create something new. And it was just like, it just happened. I didn't set out to make any of it happen. It just happened. So that's pretty cool. But then the other sort of transition phase, that sort of bookending it, is early this year, I hit burnout, like completely and utterly burnt out, crying at my desk every day, was taking an entire week to try to get through one audit, which, couple hours work, and I just could not get started. It was a combination of a whole bunch of different things, stepping over my own boundaries, not taking proper holidays, too many clients, not charging enough, all the different things, saying yes to projects that I should have said no to, all the different things all just sort of piled on top of me. And in the end, I realized that I could not keep doing what I was doing, especially for the money that was coming out the other side. It was not worth the 2 a.m. panic attacks. It was not worth, all of the things. And so I made some very big decisions. I went and got diagnosed for ADHD, and I basically burnt my business to the ground. And I had full load international clients, managing, multiple international summits a year, all of the things I was working on. I let go of every single one of my ongoing clients. And I started again, realizing that I needed to rebuild my business around my brain, which was really struggling with the, shiny object syndrome. Everything is new and exciting and fun when it's new. And then after a longer period of time, it starts getting really hard for our neurodivergent brains to actually feel like doing. And also the end part of, trying to get through to the end of all of these different things, the mental load, trying to hold all of the things for all of the people. So the solution for me was transition to consulting, short-term projects, and VIP days. And it is terrifying because it's a whole new business model. I actually have to find new people every single month now. It's not like before where I just month to month always had work to do. It's a whole different business model. It's a whole different ball game, and it has been really scary. But for my brain, I had to go through that journey of, okay, that adventure no longer works for me anymore. It's time to take it a different direction. And how do we do that?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it's each of those was such an adventure and a different adventure in its own right. Like the tiny house girl is like, wow, what an adventure. And then the summit manager and the international clients and the shiny entrepreneur, what an adventure. And so this version too, like the wise, wild wholeness of determining who you are as a hero, the hero of your own journey, and stepping into what do I actually need to support myself as the hero of this journey? And what does my adventure look like when I'm no longer running off on everybody else's side quests, but I'm actually mapping out a plan that's sustainable and sane for me? It can feel boring, like virtual assistants, for example, in that sense, like law, and risk management. It can have that boring connotation to it, but it's when you decide that this is my epic adventure and I'm going to make it work in the way that works for me. It really it activates that part of us that gets bored with the mundanity and helps us to stay on track, because we're not just in this for ticking boxes. We're in this because this is fun. This is interesting. So one of the things that stuck out to me in what you were talking about there was for business owners who might feel like they are on that journey that is a never-ending uphill climb. You mentioned how systems and strategies can help us in creating that sense of ease and adventure instead of the overwhelm. And I think that's very, very true. Yeah. So can you give us a little bit more? Where would, if you were someone with no systems or strategies in your business and you were sitting in that space of overwhelm, where would you begin looking? What would be the one place you would begin looking at to start, I don't know, bringing some adventure and ease back into your business?
Absolutely. I think there's a couple different things that I ask people. The first one is, where are you losing the most time? What is it that you are doing on repeat week after week after week that is consuming your hours? This is effectively a leak in your business. So where is that happening? What is causing you the most stress and overwhelm? If there is something that makes you just feel completely nauseous, if it's waking you up at 2 o'clock in the morning, if it's not letting you tap out over the weekend because you have to go in and fix it, that's another place. If there is something that you are consistently avoiding that actually has to be done. So sometimes when we're avoiding things, it's because it's actually not a priority and we probably need to take it off the list. Sometimes when we're avoiding things, it is because there is this deep resistance to doing it, whether it's because we feel incapable of doing it, whether it feels boring, whether it's just not activating the right parts of our brain. You know, when we're avoiding something that actually has to be done, this is another place to work things, to look at. The other thing I would say is so basically a system is the way that you do anything. The way that you make your coffee in the morning, you know, you put the coffee in, you put the sugar in, you put the milk in, you put the hot water in, that's a system.
Yeah.
A process is the way that we do any little thing. When we talk business systems, we're often talking about the tools and the structure that actually holds that information. So how do we actually hold our client information? How do we actually onboard a new person? How do we have the phone call? Where is all of this happening? That's sort of the system that we're talking about. But when we actually think about the logistics of systems, we're talking about those little processes as well. So starting to identify how you actually do things and how could you remove some of the mental load and overwhelm from that. I had one client who was saying that she was getting really stuck with just getting started on a project, could not work out how to get started. So simply, I said, get a sticky note and write down the actual steps, your process, your system for doing that. And next time you go to do that, rather than trying to get your brain to try to work out where to start, just pull out the sticky note because now you know where to start.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different things about it. Part of it is just the reflection stage of, okay, what's actually going on? How do I do things? What are the steps involved? And combining that with the what is actually going to make a big difference for me. And typically for a service-based business, this will typically look like putting some structure in the inquiry, onboarding, like that sort of phase. Like how do we speak and communicate to people? How do we remind ourselves to go and have those phone calls or to send that follow-up email? How do we get everything that we need from our clients and actually open that project? For a product-based business, it may look something like, how do you actually automate the follow-up or the FAQs? How do you automate the, hey, please leave me a review? Like that sort of stuff. It's generally for the product-based businesses, it's sort of in that. So if you're a product-based business, it's probably something to do with starting, if you're brand new to automations, how do people buy from you? And then how do you contact them after? If you have something like Shopify website, Etsy, something like that, there are options. Etsy, you can't technically be pulling their email addresses. So how can you actually build into the product all of the follow-up information so that you don't need to be responding to all the messages? Because every question that you answer for them in the back of the ebook with here's the information is one less message you have to respond to.
Yeah.
Every additional piece of information that you can put into the product description about your shipping process, about your custom process, all of that sort of stuff. It's one less message that you're going to have to answer. If you do have something like Shopify, look at integrating it with a email marketing system. I'm a big fan of MailerLite. It works really well with Shopify and it makes the process really easy. It's drag and drop. It's free for under 1,000 subscribers. If you don't have any email automations, start there. For the service-based businesses, it is such a big leak in the, the communication. How many people have you forgot to follow up with in the last 6 months that you said you were going to send that something to? How many people did you forget that, you've spoken to them at an event and you said, I'll email you with some information about how we can work together? How many clients did you miss out on because you didn't have a way to manage that information? So if nothing else, if you just start putting some processes in place for yourself for how you actually manage that, that's a great start. And if you can template as many of those conversations and emails as possible, go for gold. I love ClickUp. That's a big fan. Like, I'm a big fan of ClickUp, but I want to make it really clear that I don't ever advocate for a particular system. I think that especially as neurodivergent business owners, part of our responsibility to ourselves is working out how do we actually like to interact with information.
Yeah.
A lot of people love something like Asana, which is very list-based. I tend to find for my neurodiverse clients, the list can be very overwhelming. Asana typically doesn't work very well for a lot of neurodiverse individuals, but that's obviously not going to be across the board. There will be some that it works really well for. A lot of people that I work with much prefer something picture-based. A lot of colors with a lot of drop downs, a lot of functions, and a lot of ways to automate, change the view, change the layout, all of those sorts of things. So working with tools that work really well for you is a really, really great start. But if you can start building for yourself like a CRM, if you haven't heard that term before, it's customer resource management, build yourself a tool where you can manage those conversations. It's going to completely change how you interact with people in your business.
Yeah. And that's, to be honest, that's where my foundation, what turned a corner for me. And I tried so many different CRMs and none of them worked for me. And then I found Streak, which integrates into Gmail, and I set up my pipelines and I could make them rainbow. And I could move people between my various stages of my rainbow. So it was pretty. And each client had a box and all of their correspondence was saved into that box, and I could write notes and keep it in that box. And that was the first game changer. And then it was writing the templated emails, because it allows you to have snippets, writing those templated emails and having the workflows that follow up, and then bringing on board someone like yourself, my business manager, Sheree, who lives like an hour north of me, but we hardly ever see each other in person, but we talk once a week without fail, where she walks me through my pipelines and says, okay, and I tell her where each client is up to and who I need to follow up with and what I need to do. And she says, right, follow up with them right now while I'm doing this. And she's got that list, and she now sends out all of those templated follow-up emails for me so that it works so much better. The other thing I've got, I like Asana for content, but I use it in the board file where I just can save everything to a very specific project with all of its pictures and everything. So it is bright and colorful. But with lists, I love it for my zombie list. So for things like my finances, where I used to be trying to reinvent the wheel each week, trying to remember now what do I need to do? I decided to be really kind to my zombie brain, and I gave myself my little to-do list that pops up each week, and it's broken down into the stupidest, simplest, open this file, press this button, go to this thing, copy this number into this file. And it's just like the simplest little steps, so that there's no excuse for my brain to go into overwhelm, because the next little step is such a baby step. And it's written there for me, so I don't even have to think about what it is. It's just like, okay, do that. Okay, do that. Okay, do that. That it takes away the resistance, that zombie.
Oh, for sure.
Zombie
And this is
stuff.
So we would technically call these SOPs, and SOPs is like a really scary term. So calling it a zombie list, like, I really love that, but really it's just the way that you do things. But there are so many advantages to it, because one, it frees up your brain. So we start stepping past executive dysfunction. Two, it makes outsourcing that much more possible. Because if you have a list of, we do this, 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 and then this file is here, someone else can repeat it. Exactly. But also now you have a map for how you automate as well, because now you know that this goes here and then this does this and then this does this. Now you can actually start mapping out how you could automate those things. And if you don't actually understand your process and you don't understand you do this, it's really hard to start working out what's the potential for automation.
Yeah.
Once you have that laid out, it's so much more possible.
Yeah. I find that my inner rebel resists the structure of an SOP. Whereas
Yes.
it's perfectly happy with me having a zombie list for those days
Yes.
when my brain is in zombie mode. And it's like, yeah, well, that makes perfect sense. I'm happy with that. So it's about naming things, just like I name, risk management about dragon taming.
Yeah.
Using the metaphor can be a way to make it more of a hero's journey, make it more of an epic adventure, bring some excitement and fun back into stuff that, you might otherwise resist because it just feels so mundane. So sprinkle your little bits of unique and individual magic wherever you can find it.
Absolutely. And in your templates as well. Like make sure you put some of that magic in your templates as well.
Yeah. If
This
it's
is
not
how,
pretty, it's not worth
especially
doing.
exactly. But especially if you do start outsourcing that step to someone else, you can still have you showing up in that communication because you have put yourself into those templates. I was managing,
Absolutely.
yeah, I was managing the like the inquiry process for one of my clients. I was business manager for a couple of years. We got her entire inquiry process down about 10 minutes per lead because everything was templated like from the inquiry all the way through to onboarding, all the way through to like project milestone updates was all templated. But she was in that template because we had worked on them together and, done all the tweaking and made sure she had a pretty footer in there and all that sort of stuff. And we actually knew how to handle that together in a way that was still really personal, but also really supportive to the clients.
Absolutely, absolutely. And those templates that my VA sends out now, they're very much written by me and they're very much me. Like people don't notice that it's not me sending it specifically, but it's stuff that needs to be said every single time. Like you buy one of my DIY packs, this is what you need to know. And so I wrote it, but rather than writing that same information over and 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 over again, like I was at the beginning, now it's just there and it just gets sent. And I don't have to worry about clients falling through the gaps and getting lost in my system as like they used to, because, Cherie knows after this many weeks, we send this one. And then if they haven't responded, we send this one and this one, and they've got that structure. Yeah. So
love it.
All right. Letting go of expectations is a big part of this, isn't it? The way things should be done. And it can feel really risky in that world that's full of shoulds. Like you should have SOPs. You should be doing things this way. So what's one expectation that you've released that's had a profound impact on your ability to thrive? Have you said, stuff the establishment, I'm doing it my own way?
I think for me, a big one has definitely been the idea that it has to be hard and we have to work really hard for it to be successful. Like there's this really big, I know coming through like my parents, my grandparents, there was this whole like put your blood, sweat and tears into it and but we started off on the milk crate, so you should too. And like there's been this whole ethos of it has to suck, like it has to feel hard.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't hard, well then what right do you have to, like letting go of that expectation is really freeing. We don't actually have to expect business to suck. There will be hard times, but business as a whole doesn't have to feel hard. It should feel good. If we go into it expecting, well, business is hard work, so it's going to suck and I'm going to be on the laptop till 11 o'clock at night, like that's what you're creating, so if you can let go of that. For me as well, just some of the expectations around being able to be 100%. So for me, I know that if I'm hitting 80% consistency, that's really good. I know that between kids and chronic health and pain and fatigue and all of the other things that I will never be able to keep up with what some of my mentors can or who other people that I look up to and find inspirational in business. I will probably never be able to keep up with how much content they create and how much they get done and how many launches they can do in a year. I I can't expect that of myself. I have given myself the permission to be okay with it not being that fast. You know, sometimes it takes 3 hours to get the kids to do maths and English, and I have already lost my entire morning by the time I get to my desk. Now we mostly natural learn, so we're mostly just doing like maths and English is sort of like the box tick so that the teachers in the family don't, get too upset about things. It's at least hey, look, they're doing maths and English. But even with those two subjects, sometimes it can take 20 minutes and sometimes it can take 3 hours. And I don't get that 6 hours without kids asking for a snack every 3 minutes that other people do. So the
They
expectations
do
that
grow
I have
up.
for
It does get
myself,
better.
well, I mean, I hope so.
But I
Um,
have to beg them for attention now because they're off doing
yes.
their own thing constantly. So it gets better.
Look, I wouldn't trade it. I've definitely gone
Oh
through
no.
phases where school has definitely been something that I have solidly played out, and we've started calling the schools for different, questions and things. But then I get to this point, I'm like, but what would I be missing out on?
Yeah.
And yeah, what would
I
I
was
be
never
missing
going to
out on?
outsource
And
that fun.
I would have to pack lunches every day, and I would
Yep.
actually have to be on
Do the
time for the school
school
drop
run.
off
No,
every
no, that was
day.
never going to happen.
And the big one for me is I love the weirdness that our kids
Yeah.
have the freedom to have. And
Yeah.
not in like a nasty, horrible kids a weird way, but like in a you are amazing and unique and wonderful, and your weird is your weird. And I love it so much.
Yes.
And I don't want them to lose that. And I know that there's such a huge
Absolutely.
expectation to conform in school. And, I don't I don't
Ooh,
want to
and
make
that's
them do that
that's
right
the
now.
perfect segue back in because
Yeah.
being a good boss to ourselves on an epic adventure is about giving us permission not to conform and embracing that weirdness that makes us who we are and allowing ourselves to be like we have that. We're like homeschooled business owners, like we're outside the establishment. We've got the freedom to make up a system that suits us. And so if you're trying to squeeze yourself into what you think a corporate box should look like or what other people are doing, you're doing yourself a great disservice because everyone else's epic adventure is not yours to walk. It's all about finding out, what does your epic adventure look like for you? What does your business support you to do? And, how does it hold space for you to live that weirdness and really enjoy the life that you've got the freedom to live? Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, your weird is probably your superpower as well. Like I was always the kid that got in trouble for asking too many questions. Like that was the big thing whenever I'd get feedback. I was in school for a very short amount of time, and the feedback from the teachers always, they question everything. They'll make a very good laboratory science because they won't stop questioning me and all this sort of stuff. Like that was the ongoing feedback. But being able to ask those questions is to step back and to see the bigger picture and ask questions that are over here that are actually far more relevant than people would think. That is how I get to craft systems that actually work for people because I'm able to ask all of those questions. Like that thing that I was always in trouble for as a kid that people found a little confronting or a little annoying. Um, that is one of my biggest strengths. So your weird is probably your superpower. Let that be part of
Absolutely.
who you are as, the main character in your own story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for this lovely conversation. It's been heaps of fun. And
Thank you for having
I
me.
look forward to sharing it with everyone. Yeah.
Wonderful.